Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. Can you be fired or can you lose unemployment benefits for not being vaccinated? That's what I'm going to explore in this video. If you are a subscriber to our channel, please consider clicking the like button. Please consider enabling notifications. And if you're not a subscriber to our channel, please consider clicking the subscribe button below. My name is Dr. Chhoda and welcome to our channel. This channel, the Ignition Time channel, is about the country, the economy, as well as our money. I'll provide you with a link to all of our resources in the description section below. More and more employers are now requiring proof of vaccinations. I'll give you a partial list of these employers and also share some information about a brand new and a significant employer that just announced that vaccinations are going to be required for office workers, not for restaurant level workers. This employer is actually McDonald's. But first, let me give you the full list of employers that are requiring proof of vaccinations in order to allow their staff members, their employees to get back to work. This list includes Uber, Netflix, Jeffries, Walmart, United, Disney, Cisco, federal employees, Tyson, Facebook, Google, Equinox, and Microsoft. In fact, McDonald's just announced that they are going to delay return to work for office workers and they will indeed require vaccination. Now, this vaccine mandate does not apply to restaurant level workers, but the McDonald's global chief, Heidi Capozzi, wrote in an internal note that was actually obtained by CNBC. She said that state and local governments have asked the company to require vaccinations. Now, folks, this is extremely significant because private companies can create their own rules. I want to be as clear as I can because I think there's a lot of confusion about this. Private companies can create their own rules and can require vaccinations. Okay, so this is essentially how things are. Now, what happens if a person is not vaccinated? How does it affect their return to work? And by extension, how does it affect their ability to continue to get unemployment? We're actually going to explore that. There was an excellent report that was done by CNBC. We're actually going to take a look at that report together. I'll be playing that report for you in just a minute. But here's the bottom line. If there is a religious reason, okay, or if there is some sort of a disability, some sort of an immunocompromised disability that prevents an individual from getting vaccinated, that could be something that the employer has to take into consideration, and then the employer will say, okay, you're unvaccinated, I get it. And because of that, the employer may have to allow or may have to let a person come back to work again because there are religious and there are disability considerations that prevent an individual from getting vaccinated. Now, here's the tricky part. If an individual is not able to go back to work because, and it's trying, hopefully this is clear, but if an individual is not able to go back to work because they just decided they didn't want to get vaccinated, in other words, there is no religious reason or there is no disability because of which they could not get vaccinated, and if a person's like, I don't believe in this pandemic, I don't want to get vaccinated. If you're one of those individuals and then your employer essentially refuses to have you back to work because you're refusing to get vaccinated, then you may not be able to qualify for unemployment benefits. And that's the twist in this situation, because I know there are a lot of individuals out there who simply don't believe in getting vaccinated, and that's just the way things are. Now, those individuals, if they cannot get back to work with these employers, and again, I gave you a partial list of these employers: Uber, Netflix, Jeffries, Microsoft, United, Equinox, Google, Facebook, Cisco, and also more recently McDonald's. If you work for one of these companies and they require proof of vaccinations, and if there is neither a religious reason nor a disability reason that prevents you from being vaccinated, then you will not be able to go back to work with these companies, even though they are allowing or asking individuals to come back to work. So really the situation here is, and by the way, 58% of eligible American adults have been vaccinated. So for those of you who've been vaccinated, who can get back to work, and if your company requires it and you are vaccinated, and presumably your company may or may require proof of vaccination, some don't. I guess there's a self-attestation component to this. So for them, it's a pretty straightforward thing. But for individuals who decide not to get vaccinated, who then work at companies that require vaccination, and then are by extension not able to work for those companies because those companies require vaccination and you're not vaccinated, unless of course you self-attest that you are vaccinated, in which case you would be lying. And I hope no one's lying. I hope we're being truthful, because if you're unvaccinated, you need to understand that you could potentially infect someone else. So hopefully there is that level of responsibility. But unless you're vaccinated, you will not be able to go back to work. And if you're not able to go back to work, then the unemployment benefits could stop. That is the key over here that I want our viewers and subscribers to understand, simply because more and more employers are requiring proof of vaccination. So if you're unvaccinated, you could actually lose your job. That's number one. You could also potentially not be called back to your job. So this folks is where things get really complex. You could potentially not be called back to your job, and you could by extension lose your unemployment benefits, because unemployment benefits require you to be actively looking for work and also working. You can't just say, hey, the whole idea behind this is this. You can't just say, hey, I'm not going to get vaccinated, therefore I'm not going to go back to work because my employer requires me to be vaccinated, and therefore I'm just going to continue collecting unemployment benefits. That is not how things work. Now, I want to be as clear as I can. My goal with the Ignition Time channel is to provide you with the truth. I'm not going to give you false hope about the extension of unemployment benefits, because I have done another video on that. I'm going to tell you the truth, and to be honest, I have enough respect for you for me to just tell you the truth. So for me, this channel isn't about views and subscribers, although it does help the channel if you click like, if you click subscribe. But I just want to be honest with you. And the camera never lies. I'm being completely honest with you. For individuals who are not vaccinated, they can not be called back to work because their employer requires vaccination. Remember, private companies can set their own rules, okay? And by the way, just a bit of a tangent here. There's been a lot of discussion about about HIPAA violations and stuff like that. If an employer asks you to get vaccinated, it's not a HIPAA violation. It's the employer setting their own rules. And if you don't follow their rules, you don't get to work there. Period. That's simply how things work. I think that also, this whole thing about the whole vaccination subject is a very complex subject, but I'm just going to try and keep this as simple as possible. Your employer can and is now requiring individuals to be vaccinated to return to certain types of jobs. Okay, it's as simple as that. If an individual's not vaccinated, they cannot return to the job unless there are religious or disability reasons. And even in those situations, there's a very fine line. There's a very fine line in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed, because most employers want their employees to get vaccinated. And now, if you're not vaccinated, if you're amongst the 42% of American adults who are not vaccinated, and you just decided not to get vaccinated because you didn't feel like it, or because you feel there's some big conspiracy and whatnot, then unfortunately, this would mean that not only could you lose your job, not only could you not return to work, not only could you be fired, but you could also lose unemployment benefits. This is where things are heading. In fact, let's take a look, folks, at this report from CNBC, and we'll take a look at this together. And I want to know what you think. Let's play this and let's watch this together.
Companies from BlackRock and Cisco to Walt Disney and Walmart telling employees it's time to get vaxxed or else. In fact, we just learned today that CNN reportedly fired 3 employees for going into the office unvaccinated. And for those still holding out, options appear to be dwindling, because if you work for an employer that requires a COVID vaccination and refuse or quit, you can, of course, just find a new job. But in the meantime, it appears you will not be able to collect unemployment.
When somebody is discharged from work, most states will look at whether they were discharged due to some type of severe misconduct, which is typically a rule violation. right? So if there was a rule in place from the employer that asked somebody to get vaccinated or required someone to get vaccinated and they chose not to, in that case, they would be violating the rule.
Now, states do also consider in unemployment claims if the worker had good cause for the misconduct. To generally consider good causes are religion or disability, as you mentioned, Tyler. But outside of that, unemployment lawyers that we spoke to say qualifying for unemployment is going to be tough. According to the latest CDC guidance, about 58% of eligible Americans have gotten vaccinated against COVID. So we'll see if this economic incentive encourages more people to get the shot, Tyler.
Yeah, I would think that there would have to be some, as you show right there, some causes for not getting it. People do have religious or other reasons for opposing this vaccine, apart from concerns about the vaccine itself, which we'll discuss with Mark Morial in just a minute. But there are outs here for people who choose not to be vaccinated, usually.
There are, but they do appear to be few and far between. And even in the issue with religion, we asked our expert about that, and she said, it has to be a pretty clear, not something very, in the weeds about your religion. And so it doesn't seem to be a lot of wiggle room. But we should say that states do have discretion with unemployment claims. So you can't say never, but, the options are quite few and far between.
So, folks, that's basically where things stand. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I want to know what our viewers and subscribers think about this situation. If you're unvaccinated, it does look like the options are few and far between. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. I want you to know that you are greatly appreciated. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Let me know what you think. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. Let me know what you think, because this is a very, very this is an important subject, and I also know that it is going to incite a lot of reactions and a lot of emotions, and rightly so. I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks.